This is a talk about my grandfather, Alfred Wilhelm Rosenfeld. The inscription on his memorial gives an idea of his extraordinary wartime efforts. These were devoted to relieving the distress of refugees newly deprived of their homelands, homes and livelihoods. Born in 1908 in the South German town of Heilbronn, his own father abandoned the family when he was very young. This left his mother to support both of them and her elderly parents on her modest salary. This anyway became worthless during the notorious inflation after the First World War. He left school at 15, did a business course and then joined a Jewish-owned firm which dealt mainly with a byproduct of cotton manufacture. Much of its business was done in India. Aged only 20, Alfred was sent there, 5 years before Hitler came to power. In time, he became the managing director of operations throughout the subcontinent and the firm's highest paid employee. He was fascinated by India, making films and collecting artifacts, and lived a pretty full bachelor life. In the mid-30s, he went to Europe to find a suitable Jewish wife. He spotted my Czech-born grandmother and persuaded her to marry him. By now, he'd become a British subject. The couple travelled extensively in Europe and the Middle East. But once the persecution of Jews began in Germany, he threw himself into providing various forms of assistance. He went to Germany and Austria in person to help individuals to resettle in India. His new British passport displays swastika-bedecked entry stamps, the last dated 1938. Unfortunately, he failed to persuade my grandmother's immediate family, none of whom were to survive, to emigrate to India. However, he did get his own mother out. She took great pleasure in storming into the German consulate in Bombay and flinging her passport down, saying in effect, "You can stuff your Sarah." This was a name all Jewish women had to adopt in an effort to humiliate them. It was notoriously hard for emigrating Jews to find safe havens. One of the very few was Shanghai, still under international control. Some European Jews tried to get there by ship. Among them were professional people, artists, writers, etc., who were also beginning to arrive in India, either en route to Shanghai or trying to enter India herself. But British colonial authorities were not enthusiastic about this prospect. My grandfather was a leader of a group of by now well-established Jews who set up a Jewish Relief Association. This was to assist the penniless arrivals and guarantee their upkeep. He'd often go down to the docks, even at midnight, to greet arriving ships in order to help refugees get ashore. He'd sometimes go out in the pilot boat before the ships had docked. One such arrival, who became a well-known journalist in Germany after the war, has described in his autobiography to look out for Mr. Rosenfeld, a respected member of the Jewish community. He'd be standing behind the British official who decided who could disembark. He was to make himself known to the former. When he announced his name, my grandfather said, "We know this man very well indeed, and the community will guarantee his maintenance." The official stamped permission to disembark into his passport with no further ado. In one of several recent scholarly works published about the refugees in India, my grandfather is quoted as urging them strongly to speak only English and not German or other languages, and to behave with the utmost circumspection. He must have been well aware of official reluctance, shared by the then Viceroy, to their admission and some level of anti-Semitism. However, he clearly enjoyed good relations with the British authorities. Once war was declared, he had to make full use of these. Internment camps were set up, as they were in the UK, and refugees from the Nazis were indiscriminately housed together with some of those they were escaping from. An intense period followed of trying to get the genuine refugees released. My grandfather would go on the 30-hour trip to the seat of government in New Delhi to plead their case and also visit the camps. A letter published in a Jewish newspaper in India said, "I wonder how many are aware of the wonderful work which Mr. A.W. Rosenfeld, the Honourable Secretary of the Jewish Relief Association, has been doing towards the release of the interned German Jewish refugees. Week after week, Mr. Rosenfeld has been absenting himself from his business to assist the Darling Interrogation Committee to expedite the release of bona fide Jewish refugees. It could well be said that he has started an office in Ahmednagar." This was the old fortress town and site of one of the many camps. So frequent and prolonged have been his visits to the camp. After his death, his grieving mother put together a large album containing letters of condolence, some from Indian business associates, obituaries and tributes. One person wrote that he also used to bring things to the camp inmates. Conditions were apparently pretty poor. Most strikingly, there's a letter from the commandant of one of the camps testifying to his help, and one from Sir Malcolm Darling, the head of the screening programme himself, describing his dedicated work and him as inspirational. Aside from these activities and the heavy demands of his job, my grandfather somehow also found the time to organise religious events like Passover meals and hospitality for Jewish servicemen in India, where his organisational skills found yet another outlet. There are also other sides to him, a person of considerable culture, but time does not allow me to describe them. In 1946, he flew to New York, and his last letters testify to an extraordinary whirl of activity. They also show how much he was looking forward to rejoining his family, still in Bombay. But he was not well. The years of exertion in a tropical climate must have taken a toll. Breaking the journey in London, he died alone of a heart attack in his hotel. He was only 38. After his death, his association helped to fund the maintenance of some Jewish orphans in France. They were housed in a chateau near Le Mans, which was for a time renamed after my grandfather, in his honour.